friends, welcome back. Today I will start another unit, that is positive organizational scholarship. This is another component in group dynamics and organizational behavior, which is a very recent notion that has been highlighted in the current literature. So, if I talk about this module, that is positive organizational scholarship or POS, then it talks about the instrumentality of the individual employee, instrumentality of the group members or at the group level, and instrumentality of organizations. No doubt every organization, every group and every member of the organization as an employee, they are focusing on the most regular output, that is productivity, efficiency and effectiveness and development. These are the most obvious outcome when we talk about group, when we talk about employees or when we talk about organizations. But we have never realized that what is the intrinsic thing that moves with a person for doing a good job. We have never talked about those aspects of human behavior at work or within group, that what motivates a person to perform in an effective manner. We jump on to the consequence, from formulating policies and procedures, from collecting all the resources to aid the system and jumping on to the consequence of those resources in terms of productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, growth and development. But in this process, we have never thought of that what is the intrinsic aspect of human behavior that makes the person to work in a particular direction. Even we know that a person who is performing well will be rewarded, he or she will be recognized and there will be motivation to perform better. Beyond this is also something that a person tends to focus, because any employee is first of all a human being. So, when we are talking about group behavior or we are talking about organizational behavior or human behavior at work, then it also becomes very important, it becomes salient in many ways, that how employees should be considered as human beings and what are those intrinsic factors, instrumental factors that makes any employee a real human being at work. So, positive organizational scholarship actually talks about that aspect of human behavior at work. It can be various factors that influences a person while performing the job. It is not only the working environment, it is not only the quality of work life, it is not only the policies and procedures, it is not only the matter of motivation, leadership styles or reward, recognition, and it is not matter of consequences. Basically, positive organizational scholarship moves beyond input and output and talks and focuses and emphasizes on the human element of an employee and how it should be recognized at workplace. So, let us talk about that what is positive organizational scholarship and how it has gained prominence at work to understand employees first of all as human beings, and how organizations can contribute to employees to become a human being, and how organization can also focus on becoming scholarly organization, or in other words a humane organization. So, if we talk about this term POS or positive organizational scholarship, then let us imagine some different aspects of workplaces. That imagine a world in which almost all organizations are typified by greed, selfishness, competition or intense competition, manipulation, secrecy and a single minded focus on winning. That means capturing the market, becoming more capitalist in nature. Now, this is one imagination. The other imagination, that members of such organizations are characterized by distrust, anxiety, self-absorption, fear, burnout and feelings of abuse, conflict lawsuits, contract breaking, retribution or punishment and disrespect characterize many interactions and social relationships. That means relationships are only maintained based on economic exchanges or give and take. There are conflicts which are destroying or deteriorating all the human relationships at work. But ultimately, this is a common feature of any organization. These characteristics do exist in any organization. They are insidious, they are very much explicit, they are very much implicit, and most importantly ubiquitous, because it is inevitable, it will exist. This is a picture of any organization that we can imagine in a very practical manner also. But can we imagine it for the sake of contrast, where situation is something different in terms of where another world in which almost all organizations are typified by appreciation, collaboration, virtuousness, vitality and meaningfulness. These are the terms which we have never used throughout our discussion, but we are using these terms today in this session, where I will talk about that how to characterize any organization based on these traits such as appreciation, collaboration, meaningfulness, virtuousness and vitality. This is one imagination. The other imagination, creating abundance and human well-being, are key indicators of success. That means organizations are not just focusing on maximizing the profits. It is about that success should also be measured in terms of well-being of employees, and they should be considered, employees should be considered first of all as human beings and then employees. Imagine organizations are characterized by trustworthiness, resilience, wisdom, humility and high levels of positive energy. That means exuding positive energies, more positivity towards the other person, so that the other person is also gravitated towards more positive or reciprocations. There is more trust, there is more resiliency. That means people have more capacity to understand and anticipate any threat or danger that is existing in the situation and bouncing back based on these virtues, wisdom and humility, to understand what is right and wrong and how any wrong can be curbed in a very humble manner. This is another imagination. Social relationships and interactions are characterized by compassion, loyalty, honesty, respect and forgiveness. It is not that social interactions are maintained or relationships are maintained only on the basis of exchanging ideas or exchanging profits in return or rewards or recognition in return, but there is more altruism, there is more forgiveness, there is more compassion, loyalty, honesty and respect. That means self interest is not existing between two people. This is another imagination that we can think of. Significant attention is given to what makes life worth living. It is not that a person is coming for the job and he is slogging, literally slogging to achieve some level at work which will maintain his status quo, but doing or coming to the job which is worth living, which adds meaning to his or her life because I enjoy my work. The other is that imagine that scholarly researchers emphasize theories of excellence, transcendence, positive deviance, extraordinary performance and positive spirals of flourishing in organizations. That means more positive atmosphere is there and more flourishment is there. That means it is about people and profits and at the same time planet, the triple bottom line. So, this is how positive organizational scholarship has talked about that, not only focusing about extraordinary performances, but focusing on the positive spirals. Positive spirals means that one positive behavior is actually encouraging and another form of positive behaviors, and there is a spiral and there is more positive deviances rather than negative deviances. Due to competition, any company can lag behind in the market or in the share market, but organizations should also focus that on what aspects the company should be successful in terms of positive deviances. That means more flourishment, more transcendence is there. That means experiencing wellness in their own way, where there is mind is at peace and the relationships are not for exchange, but there is more of compassion and loyalty, which is more investment in human life. So, positive organizational scholarship considers the process and dynamics that occur in and through organizations and focus the positive, flourishing and life giving aspects of organizations. It is like something that a sunflower when faces towards the sun in the morning and that gives some energy to the sunflower. Similarly, organizations should create an environment that when an employee is at work, then the organization should offer some positive energy and deviances to that employee, that in return there is again positive deviances. So, this is how the organization and employee are life giving aspects to each other. So, POS does not reject the value and significance of the phenomena of the first world view. Here first world view means all the benefits, profits and loss that a company considers to survive in the market. Rather, it emphasizes the phenomena represented in the second world view. So, OB professionals have divided the professional world into two bases, one first world view and the second world view. First world view is focusing on all the productivity, efficiency, growth, development and effectiveness, whereas second world view is focusing on the higher phenomena where employees are being considered as human beings. So, a focus on competition and profitability in the first world view, for example, is crucial for understanding organizational survival and success. Definitely, to survive in the market, then profitability, competition, losses and survival all are very important. This is very much explicit to the whole world. But the second world view merely calls attention to phenomena that represents positive deviance. That means, the life giving energy must exist within the organization and that should be the focus, and which is only possible when we are actually considering employees and organizations as human. So, POS or a positive organizational scholarship primarily is concerned with the study of specially positive outcomes, process and attributes of organizations and their members. That means, how we are attributing organizations based on the positive outcomes in terms of forgiveness, in terms of humility, in terms of compassion, in terms of loyalty, in terms of humility. So, it does not represent a single theory, but it focuses on dynamics that are typically described by words such as excellence, flourishing, thriving, abundance and virtuousness. Now, these are all the feelings that a person can have and are instrumental in nature. We cannot just map it on an individual's behavior, but actually these are the feelings, these are the affective states of an individual at work which are reflected in different kind of behavioral patterns, which are being reciprocated and which are in a spiraling mode, that it is only leading to positive deviances. So, more the environment is supportive to any employee, more there is excellence, more there is abundance in terms of confidence, in terms of faith, in terms of loyalty, in terms of compassion, and that makes a person, an employee, ultimately a real human being. So, POS represents an expanded perspective which includes the instrumental concerns, which I have already used this term while starting with the discussion, and puts on an increased emphasis on ideas of goodness and positive human potential. It is not about professional potential or caliber, it is about being positive human potential which fosters goodness and morality. So, what are the domains of positive organizational scholarship? Till now we have given a very theoretical inclination to this term, but how to understand these terms at different levels, at individual, group and organizational level. So, to understand this term in a more elaborative manner, let us discuss the domain of positive organizational scholarship, that how this term has been defined by social scientists in a very elaborative manner. So, POS encompasses three elements: the enablers, the motivations and the outcomes or effects. Who will enable positive deviances? Who will be motivated towards those deviances? And what will be the outcome of those deviances? So, the first is the enabler, that means the process, capabilities and structural methods, that it should not be completely based only for organizational survival in the market, but the system should be in a way that enables employees to become more humane in nature. So, the process should be structured and capabilities should be highlighted in a way that a person tries to focus on the positive aspects of human behavior. So, that who will enable, who will foster POS. It can only be through process, capabilities and structures. The other is the motivations, the unselfish altruistic contribution without regard to self. That means that we are working as an employee not only for our own personal interest, we are working while being altruistic and not considering about any return out of that help. That means there is no selfish motive to exhibit while we are working on the job. So, these are the motivations that why I am working. If anybody has asked me to perform a task, it should not only be based on the tangible benefits, it should be also based on intangible aspects of behavior where there is not only satisfaction, but there is lot of transcendence and flourishment in performing that task. And the last is the outcomes or the effects of that motivation. That means vitality, meaningfulness, exhilaration, high quality relationship associated with positive phenomena. That means two people who are working together, they are not working to complete the task, but there is more flourishing relationships between the two people, which in the first world view we tend to forget. Once the task is performed, we tend to disband. We tend to ignore the emotional or relationship aspect between two people and we disband. But POS talks about that the no doubt task has to be completed, but what is the gain, psychological gain or instrumental gain out of that working all together. So, that is the outcome or effect based on enablers, the motivations and the outcome. So, POS is distinguished from traditional organizational studies and seeks to understand what represents and approaches the best of the human condition. Ultimately, if the work environment is well defined, technology is there, resources are there, good salary is there, but if instrumental aspect of employee is not satisfied, then there is some psychological gap within an individual that leads to other kind of anxiety and frustrations. It approaches to the best of the human condition, and in seeking to understand such phenomena, POS can be considered in terms of the concepts under the label positive organizational scholarship. That means positive organizational scholarship, these three words has its own significance, that why this aspect of human behavior or employee behavior has been identified altogether. So, to understand this term as positive organizational scholarship, so let us talk about the exact meaning of positive. So, this word in positive organizational scholarship seeks to understand positive states, that means resilience or meaningfulness, as well as the dynamics and outcomes associated with those states such as gratitude and positive connections. Whenever we are performing a job, we tend to anticipate some threats and dangers. How to understand those threats and dangers, how to prepare yourself for those threats and dangers and bounce back from those adversities. At the same time, when there is some significant job that you have to perform, performance has to be there. To what extent a person as an employee is relating him to the job will give meaning to an individual's performance. So, this is the positive deviance that has been used in this term. Now, these dynamics such as resilience and meaningfulness is also related to gratitude and positive connections. So, it is specially interested in the non-linear positive dynamics which are referred to as positive spirals. That means, more the person is involved in positive feelings, it is actually aggravating more positive feelings and there is a spiral pattern of positive deviances or behaviors of employee. These are associated with positive organizational phenomena. It encompasses the examination of typical patterns of behavior and exchange, but it also tends to emphasize the realization of potential patterns of excellence and especially positive deviances from expected patterns. It is not that a person who is resilient will overcome all the threats and dangers, but at the same time when a person is bouncing back from the adversity, then he also makes some meaningful interpretation of his performance that touches a man's core. That is actually the positive deviance or the outcome of this positive terms, that is spiral. Recognition will come, but what meaning the person will give while being resilient, that is the positive organizational scholarship. Thus, the interest is an exceptional, virtuous, life-giving and flourishing phenomena. The other is organizational. So, the POS lens exposes new or different mechanism through which positive organizational dynamics and positive organizational process produce extraordinarily positive and unexpected outcomes. So, these outcomes can be in terms of positive states in individual, groups and organizations, and these are the affirmative bias and orientation and not a substitute for another more common organizational phenomena. That means, here the affirmative bias is that taking one good decision, exercising that good decision and getting a good result. So, that is affirmative bias. We are confirming that when we are doing good, then outcome will also be good, and that will give a good feeling to other members and oneself. So, there is more spiral, more positive spirals and more positive deviances in the environment. So, POS spotlights how the virtuousness of organizations associated with financial performance in the context of downsizing. That means, here downsizing is not about financial losses, it is about to what extent the organizational aspect is focusing on interpersonal relationship, resiliency, meaningfulness and flourishment. That is downsizing. That to what extent members are calling themselves as collectively efficacious. How organizational practices enable individuals to craft meaningful work through fostering individual callings, in contrast to more typical focus on employee productivity and morale. That is what I discussed in the first stance only, that members should not only think about productivity or financial upliftment of the organizations, but actually the job should be crafted in a way that any employee should call that job as calling. Calling here means that you are making a meaningful interpretation that I am for this job. I wanted to do this job for so long and it is giving me some identity, some meaning to my life. You are adding something not only to the organization, but to one's own life. The other is that how the cascading dynamics of empowerment create broader inclusion of stakeholders in public organization, in contrast to focus on political dynamics of stakeholder demands. That means, when more empowerment is there in the processes, that means giving everybody consideration at equal level, irrespective of race, age, gender, sex, all these aspects when are being considered, it creates an environment which gives a psychological support to every employee that they are being considered as human and not as employees. So, this gives a psychological empowerment to every individual in a very spiraling fashion. And the last is that how building on strengths produces more positive outcomes in a diverse array of settings such as learning, employee commitment, leadership development, firm profitability, in contrast to more typical famous focus on managing or overcoming weakness. That means, not only producing profitability or fostering leadership developments or learning environment, but actually it fosters more positive aspects to human behavior. It is not only about managing weakness, it is about that what positive does any employee have and how it can be highlighted to add more positivity to the outcomes. Ultimately, we can say that positive organizational scholarship is that aspect of group behavior or employee behavior where the leaders or specifically talks about the strengths and ignoring the weaknesses. It is not about identifying the loopholes, it is about what good a person has as an employee, as a human, and how that goodness can be used to transform organizations and that particular employee as an human being. So, this is the organizational aspect of POS, and the other is scholarship. If we tend to discuss the literal meaning of scholarship, then it connotes any subject that can be researched in a very diverse manner. So, according to OB specialist, when we are talking about POS or positive organizational scholarship, then actually it highlights the gap that how these positive deviances or positive behaviors should be studied in a very scientific manner. It means that to what extent these behavioral positive spirals or deviances should be measured in a scientific manner and how it should be exercised in the workplace. So, an interest in POS implies a commitment to the full spectrum of activities involved in scholarship. That means, having a foundation in the scientific method is the basis upon which most concepts, relationships and prescriptions develop staying power. This extends beyond the desire to develop rigorous systematic and theory based foundations for positive phenomena. If we are talking about forgiveness, if we are talking about transcendence, if we are talking about meaningfulness, if we are talking about resiliency, if we are talking about engagement, if we are talking about well-being of employees, then this calls for a scientific study or base to measure these aspects of positive deviances at workplace and include it in the organizational theory and recommend as consistent factors which are very active at workplace. So, this is the idea that how positive organizational scholarship comes into limelight, where human spirit is more focused and how that human spirit can be studied in a very scientific manner to include it in the organizational theory. So, this is what we are going to discuss in this module, that is positive organizational scholarship. Next comes some correlates of positive organizational scholarship. How do we relate this concept at workplaces? I am repeatedly telling that whenever an employee faces some adverse situation, trauma or any dangerous situation or threat at workplace, he or she tries to bounce back from those situations so that he can come up again with more preparations to overcome those setbacks. That means, some jolts are being experienced by an individual and how those jolts can be handled in a very positive manner. So, positive organizational scholarship talks about certain correlates where this is reflected in every employee and how that employee is being defined as a human being. So, POS has gained particular momentum with a focus on positive phenomena including organizational resilience, virtuousness, meaning in work, engagement, appreciative inquiry, mindfulness at work and well-being at work. If I just explain them briefly, it is resilience, that is bouncing back from adversity, virtuousness to understand that what is right and wrong, meaning in work, to what extent work is giving some meaningful contribution to one's life and to the organization, engagement, to what extent the person is dedicated to his job rigorously, appreciative inquiry. This connotes that while not focusing on the weaknesses and focusing on the strengths, a leader can ask his group members that what has been done and not discussing that what could not be done. Mindfulness, becoming more aware and attentive to the real moment and ignoring the other stimulus in the environment which can create disturbance in their thought process. And most importantly, well-being at work, to what extent the person is feeling autonomous, experience mastery, experience positive relations with others and have a purpose in life. So, these are the aspects which adds to the correlates of positive organizational scholarship. So, let us discuss about organizational resilience in detail. So, it refers to the maintenance of positive adjustment under challenging conditions. We are adjusting, we are bouncing back from the adversity and then coming up with more preparedness, that is resilience. Again, I repeat, we are undergoing the stress, we have experienced some trauma in terms of accident, in terms of natural disaster, we have experienced in our city and it has a long term impact on an individual psyche. But when we are trying to cope up with those stresses, whenever we are coping and when we are through with coping mechanisms, then we come up with more confident behavioral patterns, because that experience adds more to the individual's personality. Similarly, we also become resilient to those adversities. While gaining more experience, while learning more skills, we are more prepared to handle adversity in a more efficient manner. So, this is organizational resilience. So, in organizations, resilience is the ability of an organization to adapt and respond to incremental change and sudden disruptions, recover, resume, restore and learn in order to survive and prosper. Now, whenever some crisis exists in any organization, there is one decision, it is being executed, we follow and we come out from that crisis, and we fail to identify ourselves that how we have grown out of that crisis. So, we fail to understand that coming out of that crisis has made an employee a resilient employee, where the person learns better ways to cope up with the crisis, resume the work, restore a new balance and learn in order to survive and prosper. So, that adds more to an individual's vital characteristics of being a humane employee. So, in organizations theory, resilience, sometimes also termed as resiliency, refers to characteristics or capacity of individuals or organizations which are specifically focused on the ability to absorb strain and preserve or improve functioning despite the presence of adversity. And second is, that is adversity in terms of rapid changes, poor leadership performance and production pressures, and external adversity such as increasing competition and demands from stakeholders. And the other aspect is that inability to recover or bounce back from untoward events. So, whenever there is any adversity or untoward events, to what extent, with what ability we bounce back, we cope with those adversities, that adds a positive aspect to an individual's work behavior. So, this is organizational resilience. So, when we have more flexibility and agility, then we deal with problems in a more efficient manner and resilient manner, and we are able to deal with the unexpected threats and crises. So, organizational resilience also includes adaptation aspect. It is that how organizations come out of the crisis stronger than before, because once we are into the crisis, we try to deal with every aspect of that crisis while adapting to it. We cannot resist that crisis. We only have to endure that crisis, adapt to different patterns of behavior in a behavior, and that distinguishes resilience from robustness and defined as the ability of a system to maintain functions despite disruptions. So, this agility and flexibility that we develop during that adverse situation is actually a trait that makes an individual different from the other members. Robust is everyone, we all are robust to handle any adverse situation, but to what extent we are adapting, we are enduring that adversity and bringing about changes in oneself to overcome that adversity, that is more important when we talk about organizational resilience, and that identifies the adaptation aspect of organizational resilience. So, the adaptation process requires improvement to overall capacity, that is generalized capacity to investigate, to learn, to act without knowing in advance what one will be called to act upon. That means there is so much of preparedness within a person that a person is ready to face any new untoward event or adversity even without any anticipation. So, this is adaptation process when we talk about organizational resilience. Thus, organizational resilience is the necessary capacity to cope with unanticipated dangers after they become manifest. In other ways, if the danger is manifested, we have to endure it, definitely we have to adapt to it, endure and embrace. But after enduring, we become so resilient that even when we are not aware of any threat or any threat is not manifested and it is just all of a sudden, then also we are ready to adapt to that adversity. So, this is the strength of an individual that develops while facing any threat and danger, and this is only the aspect that these days in recent times OB professionals want to focus on these instrumental aspects of human behavior at work. Now, when we are talking about this correlate of POS, then we can discuss to a length at individual level, the group level and organizational level. So, let us go through the first level, that is the individual level. At the individual level, resilience is engendered in who is most likely to have the relevant and specific knowledge necessary to make a decision and resolve a problem. In a group, so many members are there, and on the overall basis, a group is exposed to a particular threat. That is one way to discuss. What? When one individual employee is exposed to a particular threat and how he takes his own decision to overcome that threat. That is organizational resilience at the individual level. So, the predominant themes that arise from the literature review suggest that resilience is founded on at least two building blocks. There are two ways that how an individual can develop resilience. Adequate resources, that means this connotes human, social, emotional and material capital so that they can develop competence. That means they want to develop materialistic or robustness to understand the situation and gain all the support from the environment. The other is an active mastery motivation system. That means that when individuals have already experienced some success based on own decision, then they are motivated to take more better decisions and experience success in whatever decision making they are executing. So, at individual level, it is not only about adequate resources, that means available resources in the environment. It is also about an active mastery motivation system based on an individual's previous decision making process. To what extent the person is successful enough to experience success again in every decision, and how that success will manifest better decision making to overcome any particular crisis. That makes an individual highly resilient. So, these building blocks help a person supersede the prevention or reduction of risk or stress in promoting resiliency. So, resilience also hinges on individual's training experience and the development of specialized knowledge. The individual gain control over key task behaviors and exercise discretion of performing those behaviors. It is not that resilience has been developed, at the same time the training, new learning experiences all add to an individual's instrumental aspects of behavior that makes a person highly resilient. As a result, a sense of competence increases and individuals are better able to respond effectively in unfamiliar or challenging situations and persevere in the face of failures and challenges. That means, resiliency as a trait of an individual employee needs more recognition than the resources he has used to overcome any crisis. So, this is a thin line difference when we are talking about POS, that to what extent the person has gained resilience while coming out of that adversity or crisis, that is the more focus rather than what materialistic success the person will receive. So, these instrumental aspect of behavior was earlier ignored, and now it is coming in the foreground that every employee is resilient being an human being. Next is organizational resilience at the group level. At the group level, this can be discussed at three levels. The first is at the level of team learning, that is acquiring new skills, mastering new situations and improving competence are more likely to adjust positively to challenging conditions and higher performing over the long run. That means, groups which have honed competencies and likely to register and handle the complexity of dynamic decision making may be more motivated to persist in the face of obstacles and adversities. This is but obvious that when members are together, they have honed or learned new skills, they are more in a better situation to cope up with the adversity. But how it happens? What is the psychology? What is the instrumentality of that concept of behavior which is ignored, and how we can discuss right now that how that resilience at group level can be identified. The one mechanism is accumulation of prior knowledge increases the ability to acquire new knowledge and use that knowledge in new settings. Having prior knowledge, having experiential learning of using those knowledges and then getting motivated to learn new skills, that is one mechanism to make the group more resilient. If the group is not exercising their knowledge, skills and abilities in a very regular platform, then they are not motivated and they do not get aware that what are the new knowledge skills available in the market that they can hone and then exercise. But if the group members are active to learn new skills, then they are more ready and better trained to become more resilient. The second mechanism is that is expanding a group's collective knowledge base, that is competency, response repertoire and capacity to make sense of new situations. The diversity of a group's members to kindle resilience by influencing the group's capability to sense, register and regulate complexity. Here the second mechanism basically talks about that when the group behavior is being studied, every member has different kind of skills, and in the case of adversity, how every employee is giving different kind of responses to adversity, which when reconciled and recollected all together, they are offering more solution to overcome the problem. So, this is another mechanism to understand organizational resilience at group level. So, this at group level can only be highlighted when members are motivated to learn new skills, exercise those new skills and at the same time learn to give a very balanced and diverse response patterns to understand the situation in a very clear manner. So, here when we are talking about second mechanism, then competencies, response repertoire and capacity are very important factors to understand the situation, the adversity and then becoming more resilient. And the third mechanism is the experiential diversity of individual group members. This refers that teams are composed of at least some individuals with broad expertise and they grasp variations in their environment and perceive specific changes that need to be made to have the capability to act. That means in every group there are some members who have some specific or broad expertise. When those expertise are being highlighted, those experts endure that problem and learn to live with that problem in a way that they find the solution to act in a very consistent manner. So, when any member's expertise has been used within the group to resolve any problem, the way the expert endures that problem, embraces that problem, that is a quality that makes a person resilient, which maybe it is lacking among other members. So, these capabilities are mediated by effective communication process that promotes competence and enhance human, social and material assets and reduces risk of stressors, because there is more interaction within the group members to identify an expert, which gives them not only material asset, but more improved relationships among group members and how they can reduce the risk at the workplace, thus enhancing group's capability to handle complexity and increase motivation and persistence in handling challenges. So, ultimately when we are talking about organizational resilience at the group level, communication is very important, expertise is important, collective knowledge is very important, where different kind of response repertoire can be collected, and when it is being coordinated, it leads to enhanced group capability, because when there is danger, then members become more cohesive to overcome. So, if there is some support, that support is sustained by the other group members while being more cohesive. And the other level is collective efficacy. This is an emergent group levels attribute. It materializes from an individual's perceptions of the group's functioning. That means how the group members are perceiving the overall operationalization of the group, what process are being followed to make the group highly functioning, and ultimately the product of the interactive and coordinative active dynamics among the group members. This refers to the social and relational aspect of the functioning of the group, that what relations we maintain with the other group members, what is the quality of interrelationship and how it influences the functioning of the group. The better the functioning is, the more the group is perceived as collectively effective or efficacious. That means the functioning of the group is very effective. So, there is a mix of knowledge and competences in the group, that how the group is structured, what activities are being coordinated, who will lead the group, what strategies are being adopted and whether its members interact with one another in mutually facilitatory or undermining ways. If interaction is facilitating every group member, then members are in a better position to overcome the adversity, right, and that will foster some more positive deviances, because we are helping each other. If the communication is undermined within the group itself, then it actually detroits the functioning of the group and the group is more disbanded. So, this in turn influences problem solving capabilities and positive adaptations and subsequently reinforce competencies and efficacy. Ultimately, when interaction is cohesive, then it leads to positive adaptations leading to high resilient level. And the other is analysis of group disasters. If there is absence of belief in the capabilities or of the leader and the group members, then it creates and maintain a state, then it creates a state of failure in establishing collective efficacy, because the perception of one particular member or all the member is negative about the group's functioning and the group tends to fail in his or her performance. Ultimately, the adversity or any crisis tend to sustain in the group for a longer period of time and influences group's vulnerability to discouragement and fail to produce quick results. That is the bit obvious. So, when we are talking about resilience at group level, so this particular trait in a positive term can only be understood when group functioning is cordial, it is smooth and the perception of the individual or for the group itself is positive in terms of functionality and structuralization of the group. Next comes organizational resilience at the organizational level. Now, till now we have talked about individual and group level of resilience. How resilience is developed or evolves at organizational level. At individual level, we have talked about their capabilities or competencies. At group level, we have talked about the collective efficacy. Now, at organizational level, it is about restoring efficacy by enhancing the ability to quickly process feedback and flexibility, rearrangement and transfer knowledge and resources to deal with situations as they arise. But how it is being performed? How organization responds to adversity and restores efficacy. So, this requires strategic reorientations and promote competence through broad skills within the organization are associated with resilience. In a nutshell, how the organization is exposing its members to cope up to different kind of competencies and expansion in skills to overcome the crisis. So, this can be studied under two headings. The first is conceptual slack. When there is some major crisis in the organization, then the analytical perspective is developed at a higher level where diversity is the focus. How come the diversity has become its focus? Because members of the organization combined with the willingness to question the current situation and the respectful acceptance of these questions by the other members, thus allowing new solutions to emerge. That means they foster more intimate interactions among members under the term corporate slack, and members have freedom to question each other that why any crisis or adversity has occurred within the organization and what questions are there that has to be answered. Now, under these circumstances, members tend to respect each other's questions and make it possible to answer every question, because answering the question will bring solution to the problem. So, under this process of corporate slack, members tend to become more interactive and their communication becomes more clear because they are coming up with more solutions. So, this is how they become resilient. The other is the use of ad hoc problem solving. This includes networks and fluid decision structures. That problem is flowing within the organization and ultimately that problem will go in the hand of a particular group of experts. This and who are responsible to resolve that problem or conflict or adversity. For example, it is evident on aircraft carriers or nuclear plants that how a problem has to be dealt in a particular format or based as per the plan. So, when any disaster, crisis or adversity happens, then the expertise tend to establish or create their own plan and the whole organization accept that plan so that the problem can be overcome. Such strategy enables organizations to deal with irreducible uncertainty and imperfect knowledge. Sometimes members do not have complete knowledge how to deal with the problem and they tend to extend the problem. But as soon as it is going in the hands of the expert, then there is immediate solution to the adversity, conflict and crisis that resolves organization's issues, and at the same time the organization becomes resilient. Again, this resilience is a positive deviance. So, relatedly, social capital also fosters resilience in organizations and tap into their networks while responding to adverse events for needed insights, support and assistance, and cope with the broader array of interruptions or jolts. Ultimately, social capital will play a very important role, which is referred to as the interpersonal relationships that people maintain within the organizations. If social capital is very high, then approachability also increases. Any manager can approach any department and take up that problem or adversity to any department that how it can be dealt. So, the POS is a departure from the extent organization theory and reflects an attitude that views organizations and their actors as efficacious and capable of exceptional performance even in the face of obstacles. So, I will continue in the next session. Thank you.